Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Korea. Tonight we've got a story that's been absolutely shaking up the entertainment world here in South Korea. We're talking about Cha Eun-woo, one of the biggest names in K-pop and K-drama right now, and he's facing some seriously heavy allegations that have everyone talking. This is the kind of story that started as whispers and suddenly exploded into one of the biggest controversies of 2026. So let me set the scene for you. On January 22nd, Korean media outlet E-Daily dropped what you could only call a bombshell report. They revealed that Cha Eun-woo, the visual member of Astro, and the guy who's been in basically every other commercial you see on Korean television, has been hit with a massive tax bill. We're not talking about a small oversight here. The National Tax Service in South Korea is saying he owes over 20 billion won in additional taxes. To put that in perspective for international viewers, that's roughly 13 to 14 million US dollars. Yeah, you heard that right. $13 million. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about someone forgetting to file their paperwork or making a simple accounting error. The tax authorities are alleging something much more calculated. They're saying that Cha Eun-woo and his family set up what investigators are calling a paper company to reduce his tax burden. The investigation has been going on for months, actually since last spring, and it was handled by the Seoul Regional Tax Office's Investigation Division 4. That's the unit that typically deals with major tax evasion cases, not minor accounting mistakes. Let's talk about how this whole thing supposedly worked, because the structure is fascinating in a really troubling way. So Cha Eun-woo is officially managed by Fantasio, right? That's his entertainment agency, the company that handles Astro and has been managing his solo career. But according to the tax investigation, there was this other company sitting between Cha Eun-woo and Fantasio. This company was established back in October 2022 by Cha Eun-woo's mother, and it was registered as a management firm. The kicker is that when it was first registered, the listed address was the exact same location as an eel restaurant that Cha Eun-woo's parents run in Ganghwa-gun, Incheon, an eel restaurant. Let that sink in for a moment. The way the arrangement was supposed to work is that this company, established by his mother, would sign a service contract with Fantasio to provide support for Cha Eun-woo's entertainment activities. Then his earnings would be divided 3 ways. Part of the money would go to Fantasio, part would go to this company run by his mother, and part would go directly to Cha Eun-woo himself. Now, on paper, this might look legitimate. Entertainment management structures can be complex, and sometimes there are legitimate reasons for having multiple entities involved in managing a celebrity's career. But here's where the National Tax Service says the whole thing falls apart. Tax investigators concluded that this company, established by Cha Eun-woo's mother, was effectively a shell company. They're saying it didn't provide any actual services. It wasn't doing real management work. It wasn't booking gigs or negotiating contracts or handling any of the actual business of being a management company. It was just there, on paper, existing solely to redirect money in a way that would minimize taxes. Why would anyone do this? Well, it comes down to how taxes work in South Korea. Personal income tax for high earners can go as high as 45%. That's a massive chunk of your earnings going to the government. But corporate tax rates are significantly lower, sometimes more than 20 percentage points lower than personal income tax. So if you can restructure your income so that it flows through a corporation instead of coming directly to you as personal income, you could potentially save millions in taxes. That's exactly what investigators believe was happening here. The tax authorities reportedly summoned both Cha Eun-woo and his mother for questioning during their investigation. They examined financial records, contracts, and the actual operations of this company. After their investigation, They concluded that the financial benefits that supposedly went to the company ultimately ended up back with Cha Eun-woo anyway. The money was just taking a detour through this corporate entity to avoid the higher personal income tax rate. Based on their findings, they determined that Cha Eun-woo should have paid more than 20 billion won in income tax that he didn't pay. Now, if you're thinking this amount sounds astronomical, you're not wrong. Sources familiar with the case say this would be the largest additional tax assessment ever imposed on a single Korean entertainer. We're talking record-breaking numbers here. This isn't just a slap on the wrist or a minor fine. This is potentially career-altering money. Let me give you some context about Cha Eun-woo's career, because it helps explain how someone could owe this much in taxes. This guy is everywhere in Korea. He's not just a K-pop idol. He's also a successful actor with hit dramas like True, Beauty, Island, and A Good Day to Be a Dog under his belt. He's a brand ambassador for major international luxury brands like Burberry, Saint Laurent, and Calvin Klein. He's also representing Korean brands across multiple categories. In 2024, he was literally the male celebrity, with the most advertising appearances on Korean television, starring in commercials for 13 different brands. When you're pulling in income from music, acting, endorsements, appearances, and everything else that comes with being a top-tier celebrity, the numbers add up incredibly fast. The timing of all this is also worth noting. Cha Eun-woo enlisted for his mandatory military service back in July of 2025. He's currently serving in the Republic of Korea, Army's military band, and isn't scheduled to be discharged until January 2027. According to reports, the tax audit was actually conducted before his enlistment, but at Cha Eun-woo's request, the National Tax Service waited until after he had completed his enlistment process before officially notifying him of the audit results. Some people online have raised questions about this timing, suggesting maybe he was trying to delay the bad news. But there's no official confirmation that there was anything improper about the timing. So how has Cha Eun-woo's side responded to all of this? His agency Fantagio released an official statement on January 22nd, the same day the news broke. The statement was careful and measured. They're not admitting any wrongdoing, but they're also not denying the investigation. Instead, they're framing this as a legal dispute over interpretation of tax law. The core of their argument is that the central question is whether the corporation, established by Cha Eun-woo's mother, legitimately qualifies as a taxable entity that provides real services. Fantagio's statement emphasized that nothing has been finally confirmed or officially assessed yet. They said they plan to actively provide explanations through lawful procedures regarding how the law should be interpreted and applied in this case. The statement also stressed that Cha Eun-woo and his tax representatives will cooperate fully with the process, and that he will continue to faithfully fulfill his tax reporting and legal obligations as a citizen. It's the kind of statement you'd expect from lawyers, very measured and defensive without being combative. What's really significant is that Cha Eun-woo's representatives have filed a formal pre-assessment review. This is a legal process in South Korean tax law that allows taxpayers to contest the tax authority's interpretation before a final decision is made. His side is arguing that the company established by his mother is not a paper company without substance, but rather a legally registered corporation in the field of popular culture and arts planning. They're claiming there was a legitimate business purpose here. According to Cha Eun-woo's representatives, the reason his mother established this company in the first place was because of frequent changes in Fantagio's leadership. They say she felt the need to protect her son's entertainment activities and career, so she established a company to directly operate a management business. The argument is that this was about protecting Cha Eun-woo's interests during a period of instability at his main agency, not about evading taxes. If the pre-assessment review is accepted, Cha won't have to pay the assessed taxes, but if it's rejected, he'll be required to pay according to the notice. Even then, he could continue disputing the ruling through several other legal channels, including an appeal to the National Tax Service itself, the Tax Tribunal, or even the Board of Audit and Inspection. This could drag on for quite a while through the legal system. It's worth noting that this investigation into Cha Eun-woo actually emerged during a broader probe into his agency Fantagio. Back in August of last year, Fantagio was ordered to pay 8.2 billion won in additional taxes. Tax officials reportedly uncovered the alleged scheme involving Cha Eun-woo's mother's company. While they were examining Fantagio's financial structure, the National Tax Service also determined that Fantagio had processed false tax invoices issued by the company, established by Cha's mother, and imposed additional taxes, including value-added tax. Fantagio filed its own pre-assessment objection to that ruling, but the decision was upheld. So this isn't just about one person. There's a whole web of financial arrangements that tax authorities have been unraveling. Now let's talk about the fallout, because this scandal isn't just a legal matter. It's having immediate and very visible consequences for Cha Eun-woo's career and public image. As soon as the news broke, brands started distancing themselves from him at lightning speed. The advertising industry in Korea moves fast when scandals hit, and they're not taking any chances with this one. Skincare brand Abib, which had proudly announced Cha Eun-woo as their new brand ambassador just last year in August of 2025, immediately started scrubbing him from their platforms. They switched all their YouTube videos featuring Cha Eun-woo to private mode. If you try to watch them now, you get notices saying the videos cannot be played or that they're private. The same thing happened on Instagram. Posts featuring him were made non-viewable. On their X account, formerly Twitter, Abib deleted posts that had announced him as an ambassador. Interestingly, his ambassador profile photos are still up on their official website for now, but the social media purge was swift and thorough. Shinhan Bank did something similar. They quietly made all their Cha Eun-woo content private on social platforms. This is particularly notable and kind of ironic because Shinhan Bank had previously replaced actor Kim Soo-hyun as their model after Kim became embroiled in his own personal controversy. Now they're dealing with another celebrity scandal with their replacement choice. You can imagine how frustrated the marketing department must be right now. Other brands are reportedly in watch and wait mode. Cha Eun-woo currently represents several high-profile brands, including Saint Laurent, Calvin Klein, LGU+, and even a fried chicken chain called Norang Tongdak. Wellness company Body Friend is apparently reviewing whether to replace him in future promotional material. The advertising industry is definitely paying close attention to how this plays out, and you can bet that brand managers are having some very tense meetings right now about whether to cut ties completely or wait and see how the legal situation develops. The financial implications for these brands are significant too. When a celebrity endorser becomes embroiled in scandal, brands don't just lose the marketing value of that person. They often have to pull expensive advertising campaigns, reshoot commercials, and sometimes even deal with negative associations that can hurt their own brand image. Nobody wants their product associated with tax evasion allegations, especially when the amounts are this large. What's interesting is the public reaction to all of this. Korean netizens have been all over this story, and opinions are definitely mixed. Some people are expressing disappointment and anger, feeling betrayed that someone they admired would allegedly engage in tax evasion on this scale. There are comments floating around about how regular people pay their taxes honestly, while celebrities with millions try to dodge their obligations. That kind of sentiment is pretty strong, but there's also a contingent of fans and supporters who are taking a more cautious approach. International fans especially have been showing support for Cha Eun-woo on social media, with many saying they'll wait for the full legal process to play out before making judgments. Some are pointing out that this is still an allegation and that nothing has been proven in court. They're noting that his side has a different interpretation of whether this company was legitimate or not. There's also been some interesting discussion online about the whole concept of how celebrities structure their finances. Some people are asking whether the tax laws themselves are too complex, or whether there are loopholes that need to be closed. Others are debating whether having multiple companies involved in managing a celebrity's career is inherently suspicious, or whether it's just good business practice. These are actually fascinating questions that go beyond just this one case. What's really captivated people's attention, though, is the detail about the eel restaurant. The fact that this supposed entertainment management company was initially registered at the same address as his parents' eel restaurant has become a focal point of the conversation. It just seems so obviously problematic to people. Like, how can you claim a company is providing legitimate entertainment management services when it's registered at a family restaurant? That detail has become almost symbolic of the whole case. There's also been scrutiny of what happened after the company was initially registered. Records show that in late December of last year, the company changed its registered address to an office in Gangnam District in Seoul. Around the exact same time, the family's eel restaurant relocated and expanded to Cheongdam-dong, also in Gangnam. Cheongdam-dong is one of the most expensive and exclusive areas in Seoul, by the way. The timing of these changes has fueled speculation that the restructuring might be linked to the ongoing tax investigation. Maybe they were trying to make things look more legitimate once they knew investigators were asking questions. It's worth taking a step back and looking at the broader context here. South Korea has actually been cracking down pretty hard on tax evasion by high-income individuals, including celebrities. Cha Eun-woo's case is definitely not happening in isolation. Over the past year or so, several prominent Korean actors and entertainers have been ordered to pay billions of won in additional taxes following reviews of their filings. The government seems to be sending a message that everyone needs to pay their fair share, no matter how famous or successful they are. Part of what makes celebrity tax cases so high profile is that these are public figures who have considerable influence, especially over young people. When someone who's supposed to be a role model gets caught up in allegations like this, it hits differently than if it were just some wealthy business person nobody had heard of. Celebrities benefit enormously from public support and affection. Fans buy their albums, watch their shows, purchase products they endorse. So when it appears that a celebrity might have been shirking their tax obligations while benefiting from all that public support, people feel particularly betrayed. There's also a cultural element to this that's important to understand. In Korean society, fulfilling your civic duties is taken very seriously. Military service for men is mandatory and respected, even though it requires a significant interruption to careers and personal life. Paying taxes is seen as another fundamental civic obligation. The idea that someone would go to elaborate lengths to avoid paying taxes they legitimately owe really doesn't sit well with Korean public sentiment. The fact that Cha Eun-woo is currently in military service adds another layer to this. He is someone who's fulfilling one civic duty, serving his country in the military, while allegedly having failed to properly fulfill another civic duty by paying appropriate taxes. That contradiction isn't lost on people following the story. Now let's talk about what could happen next, because this is far from over. The pre-assessment review that Cha Eun-woo's team filed will be evaluated by tax authorities. This process can take some time. They'll look at the evidence, the arguments from both sides, and make a determination about whether the company was legitimate or whether it was indeed just a tax avoidance scheme. If the review goes in Cha Eun-woo's favor, this whole thing could essentially disappear. The assessment would be withdrawn, and he wouldn't owe the money. But if the review is rejected and the tax authorities stand by their original assessment, then Cha Eun-woo will be required to pay the 20 billion won plus any penalties and interest that have accrued. Given the size of this amount, it could be financially devastating, even for someone with his earning power. We're talking about a significant portion of everything he's earned throughout his entire career so far. Even if he pays, the legal battle doesn't have to end there. He could appeal through multiple channels in the Korean legal system. These cases can go on for years, honestly. There are other celebrity tax cases in Korea that have dragged through the courts for a very long time before being finally resolved. So we could be following this story for quite a while. The career implications are also huge and uncertain. Right now, Cha Eun-woo is in the military, so he's somewhat insulated from the immediate media storm. He's not doing public appearances or promotions anyway, but when he's discharged in January 2027, he's going to come back to a very different landscape than the one he left. How brands treat him, whether the public forgives him if wrongdoing is proven, whether he can rebuild his image, all of that remains to be seen. There's a Netflix series called The Wonderfuls that he's scheduled to star in, which is expected to be released later this year. That's going to be interesting to watch. Will Netflix stick with the project? Will viewers be able to separate the actor from the controversy? These are open questions. His music career could also be affected. Astro has a dedicated fan base, but group activities involve all the members. And if one member has serious image problems, it can impact everyone. There are also his solo music plans. He had been building a solo career before enlistment. Whether he can continue that momentum after discharge while dealing with this controversy is uncertain. What's particularly unfortunate is that by most accounts, Cha Eun-woo had been on an incredible trajectory. He's not just good-looking, which he obviously is. The guy has been called a face genius for a reason, but he's also been recognized for his acting abilities, his musical talent, his professionalism. He's worked hard to build a career that goes beyond just being a visual in a boy band. To have all of that potentially tarnished by financial decisions, whether they were his decisions or his family's decisions made on his behalf, is genuinely tragic. There's also the question of what responsibility he bears, even if the company was primarily his mother's operation. Was he actively involved in the decisions about how to structure his finances? Was he just trusting his family to handle things and not asking enough questions? Did he understand the tax implications of what was being set up? These are questions we don't have answers to, and they're important for understanding moral culpability, even if legal liability exists. One thing that's clear from the statements his agency has released is that they're taking this seriously and they understand the stakes. They're not dismissing it. They're not making excuses. They're engaging with the legal process and promising cooperation. Whether that's enough to satisfy the public and preserve his career is another question entirely. It's also worth noting that in the court of public opinion, perception matters as much as legal reality sometimes. Even if Cha Eun-woo ultimately prevails in his legal battle and successfully argues that the company was legitimate, the damage to his image may already be done. People will remember the headlines about 20 billion won in tax evasion allegations. They might not follow the story closely enough to know how it was resolved. Fair or not, that's how these things often work. The entertainment industry in Korea can be remarkably forgiving of some things and absolutely unforgiving of others. Tax issues and financial scandals tend to be in the unforgiving category. We've seen other celebrities struggle to recover from similar allegations, even when they've paid what they owed and apologized. The public's trust, once broken, can be really hard to rebuild. As we wrap up tonight's coverage, here's where things stand. Cha Eun-woo is facing allegations that he owes over 20 billion won in additional taxes, related to what investigators say was a shell company used to reduce his tax burden. His agency disputes this characterization and has filed for a pre-assessment review to contest the tax authority's interpretation. Meanwhile, brands are distancing themselves from him. His image has taken a serious hit, and the whole situation is still very much in flux legally. This is absolutely a story we're going to continue following closely here at Inside Korea. As the pre-assessment review progresses, as more information comes out, as we learn more about the details of this financial arrangement, we'll keep you updated. This is one of the biggest entertainment industry controversies of 2026 so far, and it's touching on important issues about taxes, celebrity responsibility, and the structures that exist around managing vast entertainment earnings. For everyone who's been a fan of Cha Eun-woo, for everyone who's invested in Korean entertainment, for anyone interested in how the business side of this industry works, this is a case worth paying attention to. The outcome could have implications not just for one person's career, but for how celebrity finances are structured and scrutinized going forward. That's our coverage for tonight. I'm your host, and you've been watching Inside Korea. We'll see you next time with more developments on this story and everything else happening in Korean entertainment and culture. Stay informed, stay critical, and we'll talk soon.